As we begin to master New Testament Greek, you have to start at the beginning. And starting at the beginning in New Testament Greek means starting with the Greek alphabet. And so in this first segment of this first module, we're going to be looking at the Greek alphabet itself. The first letter of the Greek alphabet is called the alpha. This is what it looks like in typed form. We're also going to come over and I'm going to show you how to write it. As we work with the handwritten alpha, we start at the bottom line, go up to the top and back down, corresponding to the uppercase A in English. So pretty simple. The lowercase alpha looks like a fish swimming to the left. You start here with a line on the dotted line itself to make what looks like a circle, only to bring that down to the bottom line. Notice how it looks like a fish? That is your lowercase alpha. Now, in terms of pronunciation, the alpha corresponds to the A sound, as in the English word for father, an ah sound, or as the A as in the English word for bat. So either an ah or an ah. You're going to see in some of the vowels that we work with here, both a long and a short sound. I give you those because it's technically correct. When we're working, though, with pronunciation, I think it's quite okay to go with just the first one. So whenever you see an alpha, go with an ah kind of sound. As a matter of fact, the only difference in Greek between a long and a short vowel was the length of time you spent pronouncing it. And so with your alpha in Greek, pronounce it with the ah sound. The second letter in Greek is called your beta. This is what the beta looks like in typed form. This is what it looks like in handwritten form. The uppercase beta looks simply like an uppercase B, corresponds nicely to the English form. The lowercase beta looks like a smaller version, but here's an important difference. The lowercase beta, you begin below the line in order to write it. So you're going to begin below the bottom line, come up above the dotted line to make that first curl, and then let that second curl sit right on the bottom line. That's your lowercase beta. It's important that you always write the lowercase beta with that first line extending below the bottom. Okay? That's a distinctive mark, and so make sure you note that. In terms of pronunciation, the Greek beta is the B as in the English word for Bible, so a hard B sound. The third letter of the Greek alphabet is going to be your gamma. This is what your gamma looks like in typed print. As we move to actually writing it by hand, you'll find that the uppercase gamma, you have a horizontal line, that's called a vertical line, as well as a horizontal line across the top, and you can put a little mark at the end if you like. That's your uppercase gamma. Your lowercase gamma starts at the dotted line, and this is also a Greek letter that extends below, just like the beta did. Notice starting here, coming around with a loop, only to come back and end at the dotted line. That's your lowercase gamma. Now your gamma in Greek corresponds to the G in English as in the word gone. And so it's going to be a hard G sound for the gamma. The next letter of the Greek alphabet is going to be your delta. That's what it looks like in typed print. In terms of writing the delta, the uppercase form looks a lot like a triangle. All the way up to the top, back down to the bottom, finishing off with a horizontal line that sits on that bottom line. The lowercase delta is a little bit different, starting a little bit below the top line here. You're going to make a turn, only to come back around to make what looks like a circle that sits on that bottom line. That is your lowercase delta. Now, in terms of pronunciation, your delta corresponds to the D in English, as you have in the word dog. And so it's going to be a hard D sound for the Greek delta. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be the epsilon. This is the second vowel in the alphabet breakdown. This is what it looks like in typed print. As we go to actually write it by hand, this one's very easy. It corresponds nicely to English. Your uppercase epsilon looks just like an uppercase E in English. Your lowercase, you start by making what looks like a C from the dotted line to the bottom line, only put your little mark in the middle to make the lowercase epsilon. Okay? The epsilon, being a vowel, is going to correspond in English to the E sound, a similar vowel in the English system, like you have an English word for met. So it's going to be an eh sound for the Greek epsilon. Now the next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be your zeta. You can see what it looks like here in its typed form. As we move to actually do the zeta in written form, it's going to correspond in its uppercase to what looks like the Z in English. It's your uppercase zeta. All right? Your uppercase zeta. When you go to make the lowercase zeta, you want to start here towards the top with a loop. All right? And that loop then brings down to the bottom line. Don't stop there. Don't pick up your pen. Make another loop that runs horizontal then to that bottom line itself. See it here? A loop down to the line, coming back around for a line that runs horizontal to the bottom line. That's your lowercase zeta. Okay? Your lowercase zeta corresponds in English to the Z or the DZ sound, as in the English word for days. All right? It has a longer time of pronunciation. That's why the DZ really works well for this pronunciation. Your next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be your eta, which is your third vowel in the alphabet system. This is what it looks like in its typed form. As we go to make the eta in our handwritten form, it is a bit different. Notice the uppercase eta form looks like an uppercase H in English. Okay, from top line to bottom line. As we go to make the lowercase eta, it corresponds to the English form of the N, except with one major distinction. You start at the dotted line to make what looks like a lowercase n, but don't stop at the line. Let it follow through below the line. Okay? Just as in some of the letters before, I talked about the distinctive marking that moves below the line. That is true for the eta. Okay? And so you'll want to make that whenever you write it. Okay? The eta, in terms of pronunciation, corresponds to the E sound, but the long E sound in English, as you have in the English word for obey. So it's an A sound, and it's considered a long vowel in the vowel system for Greek. The next letter will be your theta. That's what it looks like in typed form. As we move to actually write this, this is how you write your uppercase theta. You start with what looks like a large O from top to bottom. Okay? A large O from top to bottom, only to put what looks like a horizontal capital I right there at the dotted line. Your lowercase theta comes a little bit below the top line, sitting on the bottom. This one you simply cut in half. That is your lowercase theta. And as you would expect, that lowercase theta corresponds to the English sound TH, as in the English word for thing. Okay? The next letter in Greek is going to be your iota. This is your next vowel in the Greek system. This is what it's going to look like in typed form, how you'll read it in your Greek New Testaments. If you're actually writing it on a page, though, which you'll be doing quite a bit of, it corresponds nicely also to what we expect in English. Your uppercase iota looks like a capital I. Okay? Your lowercase iota looks like a lowercase I with a little tail on it that sits on the line but extends a little bit above it. Okay? Here's the difference, though, with this between your lowercase I in English. Whereas you would expect a dot in English, you don't have the dot in Greek. And so make sure that when you're writing the lowercase iota, you don't put a dot on it by habit. All right? Make that distinction and don't make that mistake. Now, the pronunciation of your iota in Greek corresponds to the I in the English system, similar to the word intrigue in English. So it's an E sound. It could also take more of a shorter sound if you prefer that. That shorter sound is the first I in the word intrigue, an I sound. So it can either be an E or an I, and I'll let you choose between that. Once again, the difference between the long and short more in the time spent pronouncing the letter. So I'm not going to be a real stickler in really hitting the tone of long over and against short in our pronunciation practices. Now, the next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be your kappa. This is what the kappa looks like in its typed form. As we go to actually write the kappa, it corresponds nicely to what we find in English. The uppercase K is what the uppercase kappa looks like. Smaller version, lowercase kappa. All right, smaller version of the K in the English. The kappa corresponds to the K sound in English in terms of pronunciation, like you have in the English word kitchen. So a K sound is what we have with the kappa. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be your lambda. You can see it there in its typed form. As we go to write this particular form, the capital lambda looks a great deal like the delta, doesn't it? Except when you make that delta, you leave off the horizontal line that sits on the bottom. All right, so it just looks like two legs extending from bottom line to top line. That is your uppercase lambda. Your lowercase lambda starts a little bit below the line with a slanted line that goes to the bottom. And then in order for it to stand, you put a little leg on it there. All right, that is your lowercase lambda. All right, your lambda in terms of pronunciation corresponds to the L sound in English like you have in the word law. So it's going to be a L sound for your lambda. Nice correspondence to the English there. The next letter of the Greek alphabet will be your mu. This is what it looks like in its typed form. As we go to actually produce it in a handwritten form, you'll appreciate the fact that the uppercase mu corresponds to the uppercase M in English. It makes it nice. No new memorization there. Your lowercase mu, though, it looks a little bit different. It corresponds to our English U, but it has a specific difference to it. The lowercase mu starts below the line, comes to the dotted line, only to make then what looks like a regular lowercase u. See it there? So the u sets on the line, but you begin below it. That is your lowercase mu. Once again, make sure you go below the line. It's what gives that particular alphabet character its look. And so you'll want to do that. Now, the mu in English corresponds to the M in English as you have in the word for mother. So a sound for your mu. Your next letter in Greek is your nu. Okay, this is what it looks like in typed form. As we go to actually write this, it's going to correspond nicely, the uppercase to the N in English. No new memorization there. The N is in English. The lowercase nu, though, is very much different. It doesn't look like a smaller form of the N in English. It actually looks like a V in English. From dotted line down, back up to dotted line. What looks like a V in English is actually your Greek nu. And so you'll want to make a mental note of that. The Greek nu looks like an English N. Now, the pronunciation for the Greek nu is going to correspond to the N in English, as you have in the word for new. Okay, so an N sound for the Greek nu. The next letter of the Greek alphabet is going to be your Xi. You can see what it looks like there in its typed form. This one's kind of fun to produce as you're working in it in terms of written form. Your uppercase letter, you have a horizontal line on the top and on the bottom. Okay, and then in between, you for your Xi, you have a horizontal capital I. Looks like this. Okay. When you go to make the Xi in the lowercase, you start at the top to make a loop. You bring it around to make what looks like an E, only to allow it to extend below the line and to curl back in a horizontal fashion. That is your lowercase Xi. Okay? Again, in the lowercase, you're extending below the line, so make a mental note of that and make sure you write it appropriately. Now, the Xi corresponds in English to the X sound. Therefore, in the word axiom. So Xi corresponding to the Xi sound in English. The next letter of the Greek alphabet is going to be your omicron, another vowel. This one's going to be really simple. You see it in terms of its typed form, but as we go to actually produce it on paper by hand, it corresponds nicely to the uppercase O in English, as well as the lowercase o. Okay? That is your omicron in Greek. Corresponds to the O sound, as you have in the English word for not. Ah. All right, so a little bit different. You'll want to note that. You would expect an O, it's more of an ah sound, close to our A, or to the Greek alpha. So make sure you note that and you pronounce it appropriately. The next letter is the P. This is what the P looks like in its typed form. If we're actually going to produce this in Greek, in our handwriting, we're going to have two lines side by side with a roof on them. For the uppercase P, your lowercase p, just a smaller version. All right. P, in terms of pronunciation, corresponds to the P sound in English, like you have in the word for peach. The next letter of the Greek alphabet is going to be your rho. You can see what it looks like in its typed form. As we move to actually writing it by hand, you see the uppercase rho corresponds to what looks like a capital P in English. Okay? But here in Greek, that is your capital rho. Your lowercase rho also looks like a lowercase p. The differentiating point is that it begins below the line. Okay? Begin below the line, go up, and allow the loop to sit directly on the line. Okay? That's your lowercase rho. Your rho in Greek corresponds to the R sound that we have in English, like you have in the word for rod, but it's a little bit more than that. It's what we call a guttural sound. If I were to pronounce it, I would pronounce it as a chro. You've got to put a little wind behind it in its pronunciation. All right? The next letter of the Greek alphabet is going to be your sigma. You see what it looks like here? Your sigma in the uppercase looks like this. Excuse me, let me pull this over for you. Okay? Your uppercase sigma. Your lowercase sigma actually has two forms. When the sigma is found within a word, it looks like an O with a little tail extending above that dotted line. That's your lowercase sigma. When that sigma is found at the end of a word, and only at the end of the word, you have what's called a final sigma. And it looks like this. You start here at the dotted line, and then the bottom portion of that sigma comes below the bottom line. So it looks just like an S. It's just positioned differently on the writing line itself. This is called your final sigma. You'll need to memorize both forms because you'll see it throughout Greek text. Now, the sigma in Greek, of course, corresponds to the S in English, like you have in the English word for study or song. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is your tau. You see it there in its typed form. This is what the tau looks like as you write it. Very simple. Your uppercase tau corresponds to your uppercase T in English. And your lowercase is just simply a smaller version of that. Okay? And of course, your tau corresponds in English, pronunciation-wise, to your T sound, as in the word talk. T sound. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be your upsilon, another vowel. That's what your upsilon looks like. As we write it by hand, your upsilon in its capital letter looks like a capital Y. So make that little differentiation in your mind. Capital Y in English equals a capital upsilon in Greek. Your lowercase upsilon, though, what you would expect, it looks like a U, going from dotted line to bottom line. All right, that is your Greek upsilon. It corresponds in English to the U sound, like you have in the English word lute. U is for your upsilon. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is going to be your phi. You see what it looks like in typed print in terms of handwritten process. This is what you see for the phi itself. The phi starts with what looks like an O in its uppercase, only to split it. Okay? Only to split it what looks like a capital I. Okay? The lowercase phi is even easier to make. It's smaller. You make what looks like an O, and you split that O in half. The thing you want to mark is that splitting in half extends below the line. So mark that. Okay, make sure you put that in your memory. All right, the phi in Greek corresponds to the PH sound in English, like you have in the English word for phone. So it's a PH sound. Chi is the next letter in the Greek alphabet. That's what it looks like there on the screen. The chi, in terms of making it in its handwritten form, looks like this. Very simple. Capital X in English looks like the capital chi in Greek. In just a smaller form, starting a little bit above the dotted line and extending below the bottom line, is the lowercase form of the chi. All right. Again, like the phi, make note that the chi in the lowercase extends below that writing line itself. The chi corresponds in English to the CH sound. And so it's going to be like in the word for lock. All right, you have to draw it out a little bit more to get the chi sound. This is what we're working with there. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is your psi. See what it looks like there as we move to actually write it by hand. This is what you're going to find. Looks like a U starting at the top form, only to leave it right above the bottom line, coming back up, and then making an uppercase I. That is your uppercase psi. Your lowercase psi looks like a U split in half. All right, now make sure you differentiate between your phi, the PH sound, and your psi, the PS sound. The phi, of course, has the circle. Your psi has more of a U that is split in half. All right? Your psi, of course, corresponds in English in terms of pronunciation to the PS sound like you have in the word for lips. Pretty straightforward. The next letter in the Greek alphabet is the last one, and it is a vowel. It's the omega. As you well know, as you've read in the book of Revelation, the writer of Revelation refers to Jesus as the Alpha and the Omega, making a connection of Jesus being the beginning and the end of the Greek alphabet, talking about His incredible character and nature. And so Omega finishes out, it rounds out the Greek alphabet for us. You can see what it looks like here in terms of its typed form. As we go ahead to actually write this Greek Omega, this is what it looks like. In the uppercase, you create what looks almost like a bow-legged figure. All right? You've got a foot here and a foot here. Okay, that is your uppercase omega. Your lowercase omega corresponds nicely to English. It looks like the lowercase w in English. All right, but that is actually your lowercase omega. And as you would expect, as a vowel, the omega corresponds in terms of pronunciation to the O sound in English, as you have in the word for tone. All right, these are the 24 characters of the Greek alphabet. Before we bring this time to a conclusion, I want to show you also 3 combination of letters that you'll want to have in memory in terms of how they are pronounced in Greek. And they all center around the Greek letter gamma, that third letter of the alphabet. You can see this here. When 2 gammas come together, it'll be an NG sound. All right, so a Greek word for angel is angelos. It has 2 gammas there at the beginning. Notice I didn't say agalos, I said angelos. 2 gammas together make an NG sound. And then going back to the PowerPoint here, notice that when a gamma is coupled with either a kappa or with a chi, it has an NK sound, like in the English word for drink. So an nk sound when those 2 combinations come together. All of them have to do with the letter gamma. Now, I find it really important as we're working with memorization, starting right off the bat with the alphabet. The more we can do to involve the senses, the easier it is to commit these kinds of things to memory. And so one of the things that I like to do is to put the Greek alphabet to a tune. I was a baseball player in high school and college and beyond, and so Take Me Out to the Ball Game was always something that I sang and I sung. And so in working with that, I've actually put the Greek alphabet to that, and I'd like to sing it through for you one time. You can go back through and work on it as much as you want, but this is a mnemonic tool that helps you actually memorize the Greek alphabet, and it will serve you well in the days ahead. All right, this is how it goes. As we break it down, this is how it would look if I put it to a particular score. This is how it would be sung. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, MC, omega. I know it might seem a little weird, but try it. It will really help in keeping this thing clearly before you in your memory. We'll see you again soon.